Jim, what Ambi Robotics is building is the future. I think it's really cool. It's really, really impactful. In your opinion, what does the future of robotics look like?
The future of robotics is incredibly bright. I think of robots like needing, of course, they need AI. So you need AI for the physical world, and the strides that we're making now in that AI for the physical world realm is incredible. And I tie it to what we've seen happen in the digital world, Grayson, with things like Chat GPT. So you think of like that's incredible. And now on the physical side, we can do that same thing in robotics, and we can help people with their jobs and make their lives better, and for humans to be able to do the things that they're really good at.
When do you think in physical AI we're going to have that chat GPT aha moment that just puts on the jet fuel and just accelerates everything?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So okay, so we'll break it down this way. On the digital world side, not only did you have algorithms, the reason it works, you have algorithms, you have compute power, and you have the data, right? You have sort of like, we can call it the history of mankind for all the words that are out there, all the images that have ever been created. And that data fuels those platforms like ChatGPT, and you get to that generalized learning standpoint. So for the physical AI for robots, one of the things we greatly need in the world is data. And at Ambi Robotics, because of the deployments we have done with our products today, we've been collecting that real world robot data to apply that. So I think that it's exciting on the physical robot side. That day is coming, and as I said, you need data for it in order to fuel that, to make it happen like it did on the digital side.
How is Ambi Robotics gathering that data and what are you using it to train?
So at Ambi, our first system that we deployed called AmbiSort, where we have deployed those systems across the country for global shippers and large retailers. Those systems are out there doing a complex set of tasks. They are identifying items, they're singulating those items, they're moving them to one of many destinations, or they're stacking those items, bringing them into the module, and then understanding where to place them into a stack, a densely formed stack, so that those can then be moved in the warehouse or outside of the warehouse into trucks. And those systems over time, the Ambi systems, have collected over 100 million autonomous sorts in the sorting system, which equates to 200,000 hours of data. So that's 22 years. That's 22 years of pristine robot data. And that fuels the foundation models for us to build more of those systems alongside. So even with our two systems of today for AmbiSort and AmbiStack, the configurations are very different, but they're using the same technology. It's the same AI. We're using the same methodology. We're identifying items and then we're moving them to a location.
Is that all computer vision data that you're gathering?
It's a combination. So this is a combination of AI reinforcement learning and vision technology, where just stereo cameras and depth cameras that are understanding what does the scene look like, and how, if you think of it, I see a scene of items and then I identify what is the grasp point, how do I hold on to it, what's the orientation of that package or item, place it into a handoff region, and then it moves it to one of 65 locations, just as a human would if you were doing this as a human task in the warehouse.
Are those 65 locations pre-mapped or how does that process work?
So the 65 locations for the sorting system are within our module. And those can be, right now they are mail sacks, but they could be a bin, they could be some other kind of receptacle. And the system, one of the reasons for Ambi in our name is that you have a grasping robot and then you have a placing robot. So that we hand it off, we grasp it, we identify it, we put it in this handoff region, and then the gantry robot will take that item away on what we call the dumper tray and moves it into its proper output location. One of those are destinations of like zip codes or truck routes or whatever it needs to be. And so that's how we solve that problem on the item sorting side.
On the item side, are there any weight limitations or dimension limitations that your system can and cannot handle?
Yeah, great question. So there is a weight limitation of 20 pounds for those items, and we can pick from an item that is, think of it as not a shoebox, but the size of maybe a pair of boots would come in. So a relatively large box, all the way down to a very small mailer that might have a piece of jewelry in it or something like that. So we can pick up that. You think of those range of items, those are most of the things that you see arrive at your doorstep from large retailers. So that those are the range of items. And just the other side of that is, for example, we wouldn't use AmbiSort to move a fishing pole, right? It's some long, skinny item like that. You would do that in a separate process in the warehouse for what they call non-conveyable items.
So the curiosity hat's on now. Where does toilet paper and Bounty, where does that fit in? Because if you look at it, if you're cowboy boots, for example, if you double the size of the box, you have toilet paper. Where does that fit into the mix?
Baby diapers, toilet paper, large consumable items, probably even things like laundry detergent. I consider though they're still conveyable, but I think of them in terms of the stacking solution instead of the item sortation solution, right? So because within the supply chain, many items that are moving are those conveyable items that can go into a bag or small container. But then there's the larger things like your examples of diapers or toilet paper that I think of as moving on a pallet. So those would go through the AmbiStack solution. They would, for example, they would be sourcing out of an e-commerce fulfillment building. They would pull them out of their pick mod, and then they would bring them to the AmbiStack solution and build those pallets and send them off to the store, right? Or send them off to the end consumer using pallets instead of sacks.
The Ambi system, you have a sort system, you have a stack system, but there's a common denominator there: efficiency. What type of efficiencies is that unlocking for your customers?
All of our solutions here at Ambi are providing efficiency around throughput and accuracy and consistency. So if you think of what those buildings are facing every single day is an onslaught of items coming in to the building and being stored somewhere, perhaps being reorganized and then sent off to a store if you're a distribution center for a brick and mortar location, or they're being pulled from those shelf locations and they're being sent to put in a parcel pouch and then sent directly to the consumer. So throughput, accuracy, consistency, and then finally worker safety is really important because those jobs are so difficult. Those repetitive, laborious tasks, the environments they work in are very warm. We call it dark, dirty, and dangerous. They can be very warm. They can be very cold. And we want to make sure that the workers are safe so they're not bending into deep bin locations or bending over and placing very heavy items onto a pallet.
Your system and automation in general is going to have a positive impact on healthcare and the rising cost of healthcare costs. When a customer approaches you and says, "Hey Jim, we want to put your system in," what does it look like? How do you build it out? And the most important part is, how do you get it up and running?
Yes. So for most of our customers, and I would say for my background, I spent 6 years at Walmart. I was VP of operations at Walmart e-commerce. So back then, I was very familiar with process and how to implement new solutions and how to have people that were alongside of those solutions that would be safe. So in many of these locations, working with these enterprise customers, they have some level of automation already. They have a historical mechanical solution, some high-speed sortation or conveyors or forklifts and those kinds of things. Our systems are full stack, so we build them, we deploy them, and we provide the service alongside of them. So if you think of, let's take AmbiSort first for items, that system is fitting in between what is already in one of those brownfield locations and it's expanding destinations. So for the customer, it's power, data, and air, and some square footage to place our system, which is 15 by 30, that AmbiSort system, which is very small, actually, for these large million square foot locations. AmbiStack, in much the same way, that would exist at the end of a sortation line with a chute coming down to it. And from there, same, power, data, air, and that little bit of square footage, which really replaces where those pallets are on the ground today. That's really what we need. And then from there, we then are providing that sortation or that stacking function, and we're generating data, as we talked about already. our systems are becoming better because we have more data, so we can make those systems better. And then there's adjacent solutions that we can build for those customers using that same data, using that same platform, and then share data with the customer, so the customer is able to make better decisions upstream and downstream from the Ambi system.
What type of data is your customer looking at? Obviously, you have 200,000 hours of data from across all your deployments, a lot of data, but your customers, as we said earlier, are focused on efficiency. What type of data are they looking for? Is it we were able to increase throughput by X%, or what specific data are they looking for?
Yeah, well, the data that we're providing, let's again bifurcate it between the sorting side and the stacking side. On the sorting side, we're providing them with destination information, right? So density of destinations, where are those items going to? What sort of modularity should they be in? Should they be in Gaylords? Should they be in sacks? And and if you think of the AmbiSort solution, where all of those 66 sacks are spread across the dimension of the system, if you were the customer, you would want the higher velocity locations to be closer to where the grasping is taking place, right? It increases the throughput because the travel time for that second gantry robot doesn't have to go as far. So information about destinations, information about size and weight of the packages, information about the package material. These are things that they never knew before when the worker was handling it. And one of my examples is the pair of socks that comes in a very large poly bag. You would not know that because you wouldn't know that's happening, and it's important because in the warehouse that causes problems for other upstream and downstream mechanical solutions, right? Like roller belts and things like that. If you imagine this pair of socks in a big bag, that can get trapped around the rollers and a conveyor. So that kind of information they didn't know before, and we can provide that to the customer. And also on the stacking side, we can tell the customer which pallet did we place the item on, where within the pallet did we place that item, so that when they sequence it into the truck as it's going to these store locations, not only can they have the pallets in the right sequence for unloading, but when something arrives at the store, the worker in the store can know, oh, that item that I really need to put on the shelf is halfway down, like 3 levels down on the pallet in the middle, and they can go to that item, which again, they didn't have a way to know that before.
It seems what you've described from the PAL perspective, you're increasing traceability. Does that have a positive impact on insurance costs since there is a more accurate chain of custody than there traditionally would be?
That is a great question. Perhaps I think that all of these things working together in terms of the data side will help the customer. Will not you mentioned already for worker safety, absolutely, moving them away from having to be parcel handlers to now being robot operators will certainly make insurance costs lower and injuries far less. A great point of what's happening in terms of chain of control for those items. I'm sure that there's going to be savings there as well.
The Wall Street Journal last year had that great headline, Robot Wranglers. And I'll never forget that because you're right that these warehouse jobs, you're going to basically manage the automation because the throughput, even with a potential recession on the horizon, tariffs, consumers are still buying goods. They're addicted to it. They're going to continue to buy, and it's going to go through warehouses, and more automation is going to come to the warehouse sector. When do we get to a point where we have a fully automated warehouse?
Yeah, I know that people talk about a fully automated warehouse. I really believe that with the vast amount of ambiguity and decision making that has to happen in these warehouse locations, I much rather subscribe to a world where there are people there, and there are people with great tools that are able to make decisions that will help more with efficiency instead of doing those backbreaking jobs. And as you mentioned, it's so difficult to find these workers to do these jobs that we have found with our deployments that the job level is higher. So there's a higher grade, there is a robot operator job position that before never was there, which pays more and frankly is a better job. When you're interacting with these parcel items or boxes or whatever it is, because they're paper goods and plastic, and over time, it really hurts your hands. I mean, it literally hurts your body to do that work. So I always think about, just as we had innovation through time on the bigger scale, shovels and wheels and things that make our jobs better and our lives better. I think of AI robot solutions in the same way.
When do we get vocational schools to really lean into the opportunity there is with robotics in warehouses? Because a child can go to a vocational high school, graduate from vocational high school, if you want to use the term certified in robot operations, then go to work in a warehouse, and it's a very good, high paying job. And the big, most important part of that is no student debt. When does that start to come about, do you think?
That must be coming. And I guess I would say there's a tipping point. And I was thinking about innovation. There's a tipping point where enough of these robotic solutions are out there in the world, and it all sort of plays a flywheel in and of itself, right? Where you have this like growing number of robot solutions, and that kind of feeds back into the education system. The other thing I was going to say about it is, as long as the systems are intuitive, so like the Ambi systems, where when we deploy a system, it takes us about 4 days to deploy an AmbiSort. From the time it is at the loading dock of the warehouse until the time it is live, it's about 4 days. And it is literally an hour or so for the worker to understand how to interact with the robot solution. We have a HMI display that tells them what the robot is doing. They, as I said, they move from this parcel handler job to now they're a robot operator, and they're basically placing the input into the system. And then when the sacks fill the locations around the robot, then a light comes on and tells them to go over and pull that sack out. And they basically tie it off and put it in an empty sack, and then the robot keeps on moving. So the the simplicity of the solution, I think, is very important. So you don't have to have lots of training on how these mechanical solutions work, how these robotic solutions work.
To achieve that simplicity, a lot of work goes into the UX, UI. How did you design the user interface to be so intuitive where an individual in under an hour could understand how to truly operate your system?
Our approach is, first of all, work closely with the customer, understand what their manual process is today, understand how they are providing that throughput that they have today and that accuracy. And we built the solution with people in mind. We wanted to make sure that ergonomically it worked well, the ease of interacting with the system. And as we thought through what we needed to communicate to the worker, it really does seem evident, like self-evident, like how you would provide that interaction. And we provide this seamless capability for them not only to see how is the robot performing right now, but what do I need to do next? Meaning this, it just as another example, when a destination location begins to fill, we use a blue blinking light that tells them, oh, this location is about to be full. We're sensing that it is close to full. So that helps them prepare as they're moving throughout the other robots that they're interacting with. It helps them know, like, I need to come back in about this much time so I can do the function that I need to do, because the robot is doing a bunch of other functions for me, and they're working in this symbiotic relationship. So that's how we built all of the interaction with the HMI for the operators.
But there's a common denominator here. You put the human worker in the mix. And to me, that was a good. Why did you make that decision?
It seemed, as I was saying, it seemed that, well, first of all, the locations, my time at Walmart and at UPS before that, there is a history for all of these locations, because you're going through time and you're always serving that throughput, which always gets bigger. You build a building, you put the automation in place, and you have it set for a certain amount of in and out throughput for the day. And that volume keeps going and going and going. So it made the most sense to us to approach this where we can work alongside of that automation that's already there and provide the analytics that go along with it. The people that are in those buildings have so many other jobs that they're doing as well. And in terms of like this being, we're going after complex problems to solve for the customer, and there's a point solution part of it, but it also expands into other areas. So in my time in working directly with solving these problems in warehouses, you need to solve the biggest problems that are complex, and you need to have people that will move, like once their particular job is a little bit better in one area, then it gives them more time to work on these other areas and focus where they need to. And it seems the right thing, the right way to approach these problems is this combination between people and the robots.
Do you feel that's helping to build trust where there are certain individuals, and I know some of them that work in warehouses that think I'm the boogeyman, I'm the bad man. Well, I'm not the bad man. But the way your approach is starting to build that trust. Look, we can coexist in this hybrid world in harmony.
Yeah, I think that in fact there's many levels of trust that is being built here. Not only as Ambi Robotics being an expert in supply chain logistics and being able to work closely with the customers. So think of it as like the management layer, the director of the facilities, that kind of layer. There's also trust with the maintenance teams. So providing a solution that is, because those customers have to maintain those systems that are operating, we help as well. We provide a fantastic service alongside of the robot solutions, but the maintenance team also wants to know what is in their building. They have these sorters and conveyors and forklifts, so there's always a maintenance team. So building trust with the maintenance team that we have been thoughtful about the solution. And then finally, trust on the worker side, where we've had many examples where workers have said to me, this is my robot. They will also say things like, my robot will do it this way and works in a particular way that sounds like a personality. They're all actually the same. But I found that with people that one last example where people will take selfies and send pictures to their high school age kids to say, like, look where mom's able to work now. I work alongside of this robot. So all of those things through time, I think that that's how robot solutions will be for many different areas, not just in warehousing, but again, as like alongside people and helping us have better lives.
It's building a relationship. There was an MIT study from the late 90s, early 2000s where they put, I'm going to use the term generally, robots. Basically, it was an Alexa with a screen, and they put it in senior citizens in nursing homes to see what the reaction would be and remind them, okay, you have to take this pill today, that pill today, and all. We have to do your blood pressure this time. And these senior citizens built such a trust when they took them away that they flipped out. So, oh, no, 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 no. And they got very senior citizen-y, and they put a foot down because they grew to trust our robots. It's very similar to what you're saying, that the individuals that are using your systems are building that trust. I'm curious from a maintenance perspective. You mentioned packaging. Certain packaging could have let's say, a more negative impact on the system over time versus other forms of packaging. Are you seeing where your clients are now advocating for shippers to use certain types of packaging because it can help improve the longevity of their system?
Yeah, I'll give another example to that before I answer, which is, so dark packaging, shiny, reflective packaging. Also, not, as we said, not having the right item in the right size package is not only, it seems wasteful. I'm sure you have many times received a small item in a large box, and it seems very wasteful. That is data, as I said, that is data because of our tactile interaction and our vision technology. That is data that we're now providing, and I have seen a couple of examples where shippers have gone back to their retail partners where they're receiving an injection of many products to go out to consumers. I've seen examples where they've gone upstream and not only asked for packaging changes, but also labeling, because there are some of those where labels, for example, can be sprayed on. So there's a spray on process that happens, which works, but it needs to have the right level of ink in it, just as one example. So I think that all of these things will help the supply chain be better, and not just the robotic solutions in these facilities. As I mentioned, the other sort of historical mechanical solutions need that as well. And we as consumers, I would also say this shift, we as consumers, it has always been a problem of dealing with packaging. And at my house, I'm receiving many items now that just come with the product packaging itself. Like they're delivered to the front door without any kind of outer packaging. And as long as it has a label on it, the robot systems can handle that very easily.
It makes it simpler. It's one less thing to recycle. You look at Republic Services, big publicly traded recycling company. They love the Amazon boxes because it keeps making money for them because of recycling. But a lot of this stuff we don't need. And then when you talk about air, when you get some package from Amazon, I order toothpaste. I get this big shoebox size thing, and the toothpaste, it has all the air pack. I'm like, what the heck is this? You can make it a lot smaller. When do we see packaging shrink?
As we build these efficiencies, I have seen with some retailer, one you just mentioned, where when they're moving to looking at the product itself and saying, hey, this product packaging is plenty sustainable for the supply chain, and that can move through the supply chain. I like those kinds of things. So I do think over time it will depend on product packaging itself, as well as automation in place. This is another piece of automation that I've seen where packaging that is formed exactly for that product or products that are going in that order, and it reduces the shippable DIMs of those packages moving through supply chain. So I do think it will come.
Well, we continue to see the trend of, obviously, on, let's call them the outskirts of a city, you have your very large DCs. And then Walmart was very public of this for a while with their dark stores. Well, we continue to see smaller micro warehouses move closer and closer to the urban core just because of the delivery time. And if so, where does Ambi going to play in that?
That is a great question as well. So I always think of this as solving the problem of these unique delivery locations. So if you move the fulfillment center essentially to the highly dense urban locations, you're basically, if you're in the back room of a store, or you can be, perhaps there's some transformation that I keep thinking of where shopping malls, we built a lot of shopping malls over time. We tend as consumers to not go to shopping malls anymore. So one idea that I've had in my head is move those to be distribution locations. And so AmbiSort solutions can be in those kind of solutions. You can basically move packages in bulk to those kind of locations. And then you can do that final mile sortation right there and move it to the consumer's home. I think that I've always thought of that as a viable solution for all of that real estate that's in the middle of urban locations.
They have docking bays, and they have a lot of those stores historically were anchored by 1, 2, sometimes 3 or 4 major department stores, and a lot of those stores no longer exist. So you have the footprint, and for you and for your business, you have power, and so you have all the infrastructure you need. Those stores, if you look at Sears Roebuck, they got hit by, I'll call them economic tsunamis, and they eventually went away. As Walmart.com scaled up and as Amazon scaled up, a lot of them went away. Today, there's a lot of economic uncertainty in the world because of the tariffs and just all the geopolitical issues. With that backdrop in mind, how are your customers thinking about investing in automation and autonomy today?
Our customers, these large enterprise shippers, retailers, and many mid-sized companies, they have to solve with automation. There really isn't a choice in terms of, as we talked about earlier, the sheer volume. If you think about this problem, the sheer volume of items moving in the world, on some of them on pallets, some of them just floor loaded into trucks. You can't keep up with it. It is a tsunami. And I really believe that the automated solutions, robotic solutions, that they absolutely make sense to the customer. And you mentioned tariffs earlier and the economy. I think of these things as moments in time. So, and I in my life, I've seen many of these moments in time, both good times and not so great times, and we get through it. I believe in the resiliency of all of us in the U.S. and throughout the world, and I believe that we will continue to make these improvements with automation and make jobs better for people, and all of us be able to get the things that we want and we need, because that will never change.
Listen, we went through the great financial crisis. We went through COVID. You can go back. I wasn't alive then. My father was. We went through the Great Depression. There's a lot of things where we can go. And Warren Buffett always says, never discount America, always bet on America. And Historically, Mr. Buffett's always been correct, and things go up, things go down. If it only went up and to the right, we'd have a problem. But we'll get through this, and we'll be resilient, and we'll be stronger
Yeah.
from it. From a business perspective, what is the business of Ambi Robotics?
Yes. You mean the business model itself?
Yes, very curious.
We are primarily robots as a service. So we are essentially renting these systems to the customer. So if you think about a world where they they needed more people to do these processes that they couldn't find, right? They're hard jobs to fill. They needed more people, and they place a robot solution so they have fewer people, but again, they couldn't really find the greater number of people anyway. And then the people that they do have, they are able to pay them more. So it is a primarily robots as a service because it lowers the barriers to entry for the customer. If you're even in my time at Walmart, if you don't have to go and ask for a capital expenditure, it is far more likely that you're able to deploy this solution. If it comes down to, as I said, power data error for my location, I can make that decision as the director of the facility myself. So that is primarily our model. We also, for certain customers who are less sensitive to that kind of outlay of capital, we will do a hardware sale model as well. And then alongside of the hardware sale model, then there is a software license and hardware support that goes along with the solution, right? Because you're covering the hardware side and the software side. So that is our model. And I'll say one more thing about the model. We always look for robot solutions at a customer site that are, as I said, complex and require in the manual world could require many people to do a function. So that the ROI is high for the customer, and we want to make sure that the cost to serve is low. So we have these systems that are full stack solutions that work really well, and we can have service alongside of them, but not spend lots of our capital in terms of supporting those systems. So that when they work really well and they're easy to support, then everybody wins. That's the model of Ambi.
How are you managing for this is mostly on the consumer side, but we're starting to see some cracks on the commercial B2B side of services fatigue. Oh, another subscription. How are you managing for that fatigue that is starting to bubble?
If you look at it for these customers where they're offsetting OpEx, right? So they had, and in my example with AmbiSort, for to serve 66 unique destinations, it requires somewhere between 4 and 6 people to go to a location, take out a item, figure out where it goes to, walk over to it, place it, and all those kind of things. So if you're building a model where you instead have one person that is serving those 66 locations, then you don't have that fatigue, right? You're winning on the OpEx side if you're the customer. And what we have found is the customer will say, like, give me more. I'm ready. Like, let's deploy more of them. So we're excited about that deployment model.
Cost efficiency at the end of the day. Ambi Robotics is enabling cost efficiency. You're in two sides of logistics today. You're in sort and you're in stack. Obviously, the industrial logistics or the physical AI world, you're in the top of the first inning. Obviously, not even one out in the top of the first inning of a 9 inning baseball game in terms of where this market's going. Will you expand into other parts of this market over time?
We will, and our the way that our flywheel works for this is you have deployments, as I mentioned. Those deployments gather data, which allow you so that the deployment you have done gets better, and then the customer wants more of those deployments. And then alongside of that, there are adjacent processes that are happening within the four walls of the warehouse and even outside of the four walls of the warehouse. And what we have found, some people would call this land and expand, but we have found is in terms of when you're trusted by these large enterprise customers, it takes a while to penetrate them, by the way, to get in. But once you're in, and you're trusted, and they will bring you to other process issues that they have, complex issues that they need solved. They will bring those to you. And then we will take those on as well. Just as we have moved from sorting to stacking, there are many other opportunities within the four walls, as I said, and outside of the four walls. So we will move into those areas as the flywheel goes faster and faster.
For your business, B2B, being in the approved vendor system is one of the best wins that you could put on a board. Jim, in your opinion, what is the future of Ambi Robotics?
Incredibly bright, in my opinion. Being able to say that I'm the CEO here is the proudest moment in my life. I think I was made for this kind of role and working along these really smart people that are here at Ambi Robotics. And the future is mostly bright for us because, as I mentioned early on, because we have the data. And as I said, for AI for the physical world, you have to have the data. And not only do we have the data, we have the algorithms and we have the hardware modularity because we understand the customer's problem. So our future is incredibly bright, and we are very focused and pragmatic group here at Ambi Robotics. It's not anything flashy, it just works, and we work alongside of the customer and we care about the worker. So we're really excited about our future.
Right about the future being bright. Is there such thing as too much data where you get noise in your data, or will the more data you get will help refine your models over time?
The more data, the better. The more data that you have, so this is part of what we're doing, which is it's what you're able to do with that data. So as we look at this enormous data set, we then will filter it, and we will decide how we deploy that into the system. And we started with sim to real technology. So we started on the digital side, and that's what made our robots work on the first day. And when I talk about this decision, you bring the data in, you can build foundation models, and then you can deploy those foundation models onto the system. So if you think of it this way, for all of the learning that we did in the simulation world to understand shapes and sizes and weights of things, once you can really see what they look like, then you step that up. And we have found, as we've deployed the foundation model onto our system, the throughput goes up, the accuracy goes up for the customer. So there's ways to filter out that noise so it doesn't overcome what you have in terms of the benefit.
And then it goes back to the theme of this podcast, efficiency. Ambi Robotics is building the future of warehouse automation. The future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is Ambi Robotics. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy today.
Thank you so much, Grayson. This was really fun.